You are listening to an exclusive interview on Bass Musician Magazine. The interview starts now.
Hey everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with Dutch bassist Simone Croes.
Hi.
Hi. We're greatly fortunate to be living in a time when we have Skype, and so Simone is coming to us directly from the Netherlands. We want to, as always, start kind of from the beginning. How did you get your start in music and on bass?
With me, it started actually very early when I started making my own guitars from a measuring stick and a shoebox. I made my own guitars with elastics, and we used to have these round soap boxes, and I would make my own drum kits. When I was 9, my mom said, "You can do one sport and one instrument." I chose the guitar. Then when I was around 13, the electric instruments lured. So I went to take an electric guitar lessons. I did electric guitar for a while, and I was playing reggae, learning to play bar chords. And the thin strings were kind of hurting my fingers. And in the meantime, my bass guitar teacher, he was playing these reggae bass lines, and I'm like, I want to do that. Yeah. I love the sound much more, and I love the feel of the instrument. So that's when I fell in love with the bass. That's how it got started with me.
And how did you continue to pursue and develop? You took classes with your bass teacher?
Yes, here in my country, it's normal that you take lessons separate from your school. So you go to a separate music school. So I took lessons there. And then at one time, he showed me a salsa bass line. And he said, "Where is the one?" And I just couldn't figure it out. And then he showed me, this is salsa and this is how we play it. And then he said, "But I know a bass player from Puerto Rico who lives in Amsterdam. And if you want, you can call him and maybe he can give you a lesson." At that time, I didn't live in Amsterdam. I lived in a small town. But I took the train and I visited him. We had a click. He showed me about salsa the first lesson, but he said, "If you want, you can come back. And by the way, I think you have a talent. Why don't you go to the conservatory, to the university?" So he introduced me to bass players like Marcus Miller, Jacob Astorius, Stanley Clark, Daryl Jones. And he opened up this world for me, and it was very fascinating. So I did my entrance exam for the School of Music, the university, and I got admitted. So I studied for, at that time, it was 5 years at the university. During my studies, I did the direction of jazz, or I studied jazz music. But during my studies, I also played a lot of salsa, and I toured in the Caribbean. After I graduated, I kept playing in the salsa scene and also the African scene. So I also went to Cuba and toured there.
Nice.
And I went to South Africa, but it was kind of hard to make a living that way. So I did find jobs. I found two schools where I could teach. Very happy with that, to have that as a basis. But it was still hard to make a living, so I decided to join a cover band. The cover bands at that time, they were playing at big corporate companies' parties and also at weddings. The music that we play there is dance classics from the 80s. That's the music that's most popular for people because they can dance to it. I did a lot of groove music then as well, but then I wanted to do more. I knew I could do so much more than just back up a cover band. So, but it took me a while to take the courage to actually make that step. But since, I was also successful as a teacher, I decided to go for it and start making time free for my music and stop playing so many gigs. So that's what I did. And I started composing and step by step. And it was a journey for me where I was discovering all kinds of things, and you will hear that on my album because there's some different styles on there. So I did that and I recorded everything. It took a little while longer because unfortunately I had a car accident.
Oh no.
But luckily I'm almost fully recovered. So my album was released, or my CD was released last year, and then I plan to release my complete album online very soon. That's probably going to be the end of October.
That is the one titled Pick Up Your Bass, right?
That's the one, Pick Up Your Bass. And the Puerto Rican teacher that opened up the world of music even more for me, he is saying that very line in the title track. He has a wonderful low voice.
A common thing that I run into speaking to so many bassists around the world is that there's a universal nature in music that can appeal to people no matter where you are. And I find it very interesting to see the acceptance of Latin music and Afro-Antillean music in Europe. I want to say about a year and a half ago, I spoke with Richard Bona, who did a Cuban music CD.
I saw him, yeah.
And it's very exciting to see how well accepted this music is abroad. Now, I suppose when you look at it from another angle, you have these extraordinarily talented people that relocate. So from Puerto Rico to the Netherlands to be able to flourish and to do well. It's this migratory pattern, but they bring with them this wealth of knowledge, and it's very well received. And I'm so excited. So you're going to have the main feel that I got, because I'd listened to some of the sample tracks, was kind of a funk. I know, especially the Pick Up Your Bass has got kind of a funk jazz vibe there. Love Me was a softer, gentler, but it had its little touches there. And I wish I could hear more of the salsa ones. Now you've got my curiosity, because it's an area that I'm very acquainted with. I myself lived in Puerto Rico for 18 years.
Oh, right.
So I have been immersed in the music and the culture. And so when I hear it, I perk up right away. I'm going, oh, Puerto Rico. So very interesting.
There's no salsa music on my record, unfortunately. There's an African song on the CD, but I'm not going to release that online.
Okay.
But it is on the CD, a South African style track. But unfortunately, there's no salsa. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But it has been something that musicians have been sharing. One example that always comes to mind, Paul Simon brought a lot of music from Brazil, from his work with Batiki Kumalo. You've got amazing South African bass stuff.
Yeah, I let Bakiti Kumalo listen to my South African track from my CD, and he was really impressed. He loved it. I have met a lot of bass players, because in Europe we had the Warwick Bass Camp.
Yes.
Organized by Warwick, and you could meet all these great bass players. So I took very much opportunity of that. I also spoke to Bakiti. Yeah.
Nice. And I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about gear and how you get your voice. Tell us, what are you playing on?
My main bass guitar is a Fender Jazz Bass from 1977, all in original state. It's quite heavy. Another name for the bass is the pain in your back bass, because it's so heavy. But the sound is great. And I use 3 straps, also because of my back is still a little bit, because of the car accident. Mm-hmm. I still use 3 straps to even out the weight. And then for strings, I use ENR Sunbeams. And for an amp, I use Van der Klei. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I have not.
Okay, so you can check him out on Scott's Bass Lessons. He has a YouTube video with my gear when I'm on the road or something. It's called something like that. Mm-hmm. And also, I can't think of his name. That bass player that uses a pick that's really funky, a young guy that's coming up right now in the States.
What's whole controversy is very much whether to use a pick or not to use a pick. A lot of it goes with the kind of music that they're playing. A lot of the metal players, which I've been recently talking to a fair amount, they will go with the pick. More of your slap players, of course, like Marcus, there's no pick in sight because it's all, thumb and all that. I don't know, but do you have a particular pick brand that you were using, or?
No, I was trying to say that there is a bass player from the United States that plays really funky with a pick. Okay. And he also uses the same amp.
Okay.
The Van der Klei amp. And I really like them a lot. They're so precise in their dynamics. I've never found an amp where I can express myself better as with this amp, because it's so sensitive.
Nice. Well, and hopefully it's not very heavy with your back. That is a big consideration.
Well, I use 2x10 and 1x12.
Okay.
So I don't use a 4x10 or anything like that. Or no 15 inches. You can carry it.
It's manageable.
It's doable.
Very
It's
good.
manageable. Yeah.
Well, and that has turned into such a big consideration as we age. Things that you could do when you're 18 are no longer things that you can do a few years later. And I've
Right.
had the pleasure as I've talked to some of our more senior players, somebody like Chuck Rainey. He was talking about his bass, and he pointed out that it was light, and that's how he could continue to play, because the instrument itself was physically comfortable. With Pick Up Your Bass coming out very soon, if people want to check out some of the single samples, those are on Amazon.com. Do you have, and you may be just really busy with this, but do you have any future plans, touring or more projects?
Yeah, I'm touring in the Netherlands right now. That's the country where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some gigs in November, February, May, and then I'm planning to record an EP next year summer. I'm going to take my time with that, so I don't expect it to be released maybe until 2019. But I do plan to start a recording next year summer.
Excellent. Well, and if there's some salsa on it, I'll know that you did it for me, because I wanted to hear you play that.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I think salsa music has the coolest groove of all music that exists.
Yes.
That's what I think. The groove is so awesome.
I agree. What I have found is that for people that are not surrounded by it, many times it's difficult, especially from the percussive point of view, to pick up on that syncopated movement. I played with a band once, and we were doing a bossa nova, which is, I'll say, like salsa light. It's not as complicated, but our drummer, when he was playing, he was having difficulty getting that syncopated movement, so his drum beat sounded more like a march. And it was very 4/4, da 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 da, and I had to try to describe. I mean, this has a cadence, this has a swing, this has a kind of an anticipation to it. It's not, we're not marching down the street in a martial fashion, and it was hard for him to grasp. So I've really been thrilled when I've heard there was a Scotch salsa band or something, and they had like bagpipes, but they were doing salsa tempo and things, and I'm like, this is so wild, but it's very interesting to hear. With all of the things that you've got going on, the best place for people to find out what your projects are, SimoneCroes.com?
Yes.
Excellent.
And I'm also on Facebook, Simone Croes the Music.
Fabulous. Well, Simone, we appreciate you taking time to share this information and your journey. We're very much looking forward to the album coming out and future projects. Make sure you keep us in the loop. Folks, you've seen her here. Simone Croes coming to you live on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thanks for bassing out with us here on BassMusicianMagazine.com.